Watch them enter a room. Nothing dramatic happens, no announcement, but something in the air changes before they say a single word. You've felt this. Someone walks in and the room quietly rearranges itself around them. You call this confidence. Everyone calls it confidence. And that word has been doing so much damage for so long that nobody has stopped to ask what it's actually hiding. Here's the uncomfortable part. You've been taught that confidence is a feeling, something you build, something you can manufacture with posture, with affirmations, with enough small wins stacked on top of each other until one day you simply feel it. That model is not just incomplete, it's a decoy, and it's kept you auditioning for a feeling that was never the actual mechanism. Because the people who walk into a room and bend it toward them are not running on a feeling. Feelings are unstable. They fluctuate with sleep, with hormones, with how the last conversation went. Nobody builds a room-bending presence on something that unreliable. What they're actually running on is a decision they made about their own value, a decision that no longer requires daily reconsultation. Say that back to yourself slowly, because it's the whole video. Most people are consulting their own worth like it's a live poll, checked constantly, recalculated after every interaction. The extremely confident person closed the poll permanently, and that single administrative act, closing a vote that never needed to be open, is the entire mechanism people spend decades trying to fake with body language. But here's where it gets uncomfortable, and where I need you to stay with me, because there are two ways to close that poll, and they produce identical behavior on the outside while running on completely opposite wiring underneath. One version of confidence is load-bearing. It holds weight. It survives contact with failure, rejection, silence in the group chat, a joke that lands wrong. The other version is decorative. It looks identical in a photograph and collapses the instant something applies real pressure to it. You have met both versions. You have probably built one of them yourself without knowing which one you were constructing. Let's start with the machinery, because you cannot dismantle a conditioned pattern you can't see the wiring of. Your brain evaluates social standing the same way it evaluates physical danger. This isn't a metaphor. The same threat detection circuitry that once tracked predators now tracks disapproval, exclusion, status loss. A cold reaction from someone you respect activates regions of the brain that overlap significantly with physical pain response. This is why rejection doesn't just feel bad, it feels like an injury, because as far as your nervous system is concerned, it is one. For most of human history, being excluded from the group meant dying. Alone on the savannah with no tribe was a death sentence. So evolution built you a smoke detector, wired directly into your identity, that screams the moment your social standing seems to drop. That smoke detector never got the memo that you now live in a world where social approval is manufactured and distributed algorithmically by strangers for profit. This is the part almost nobody tells you plainly, so I will. Every platform you scroll, every group you're in, every comment section you read is a live feed directly into a threat detection system built for tribal survival. You are not casually checking your phone. You are running your ancient nervous system through a machine specifically optimized to keep that smoke detector going off. Because a triggered nervous system is an engaged nervous system, and an engaged nervous system generates revenue. Now hold that thought. We're coming back to it because it explains something about confidence that will genuinely unsettle you.
The person with load-bearing confidence has, at some point, done something almost nobody does voluntarily. They let the smoke detector go off, on purpose, in a moment of real exposure, and discovered they survived it. Not survived it comfortably, survived it fully conscious, feeling every bit of the alarm, and lived to see the alarm turn out to be wrong about the danger. This is called corrective emotional experience in clinical psychology, and it is the single most efficient rewiring event a nervous system can undergo. You cannot think your way out of a fear response. You cannot affirmation your way out of it either. The nervous system does not update on logic, it updates on lived proof. It needs a data point that contradicts the prediction, experienced in real time with the body still present for it. That's the entire secret. Not confidence as a mood, confidence as an accumulated file of contradicted alarms. Every time you avoid the uncomfortable conversation, every time you stay quiet to protect the room's approval, every time you shrink a genuine opinion into something more palatable, you are not protecting yourself, you are refusing to update the file. You are keeping the alarm exactly as loud as it was the last time it went off, uncontested, years ago. Now here's the split, the part where two people who look the same on a stage are actually running completely different software. The first person built their closed poll on evidence. They took the exposure. They collected the contradicted alarms. Their calm is downstream of proof. The second person never took the exposure at all. They skipped straight to performing the calm, because performing it got them the approval that taking real risk would have cost them time and nervous system capital to earn honestly. This is compensatory confidence, and it is one of the most common psychological forgeries in modern social life, because it is almost impossible to detect from the outside, and often impossible to detect from the inside. The compensatory version is not lying exactly. The person genuinely believes their own performance most of the time. That's what makes it so durable and so dangerous. It runs perfectly fine under normal conditions. It only fails under a very specific kind of pressure. And I want to name that pressure precisely because you have felt it in someone else, and you have probably felt it in yourself. It fails under disagreement from someone whose opinion secretly still controls the file. It fails under public correction. It fails under silence, actual unstructured silence, where there's no audience to perform for and no external signal telling them who they are. Take away the room, and the compensatory version does not become calm. It becomes disoriented, restless, sometimes quietly frantic, reaching for a phone, a task, a distraction, anything that reopens the poll and gives it a result to hold on to. This is the diagnostic, not how someone acts in front of people, how someone acts in the 15 minutes after everyone has left the room and stopped watching. I want you to sit with that question honestly before you keep watching, because the rest of this only works if you've actually located yourself in it. If this is already making you think of a specific moment, a specific version of yourself performing calm while quietly checking to see if it landed, that's not a coincidence. That's the video doing its job. If you're still here, subscribe before I keep going, because the next part is the actual reprogramming protocol, not just the diagnosis, and I don't repeat this material anywhere else. And I want you to do something before you scroll past this. Comment the specific moment where your own performed confidence has cracked. Not the general pattern, the specific moment. Naming it precisely is the first step in the process I'm about to walk you through, and I read these.
So let's talk about why this particular forgery is so hard to catch, because there's a social engineering layer sitting underneath the personal one, and this is where the villain of this entire video finally shows its face. It was never the individual, it was always the architecture. Every group you belong to, family, friend circle, workplace, online community, runs a silent audit on every member at all times, not maliciously, structurally. The group has a comfort zone, an unspoken range of behavior, ambition, opinion, and self-expression that keeps the existing hierarchy stable. When you operate inside that range, you get warmth, ease, inclusion. The moment you grow past it, get louder, get more successful, get more certain of your own opinions, something shifts. Nothing dramatic. A joke with a slight edge. A compliment that isn't quite a compliment. A subtle cooling that nobody would admit to if you named it directly. This is not personal, it's a stabilizing mechanism. Groups punish outgrowth because outgrowth threatens the existing order of who has status over whom. And here's the trap this sets specifically for confidence. The compensatory version of confidence is exquisitely sensitive to this cooling because its entire fuel supply is external approval. So the moment the group starts subtly auditing it, it does the one thing that guarantees it never becomes load-bearing. It shrinks back into range. It recalibrates downward to restore the warmth. And it calls this humility. It calls this being a team player. It calls this staying grounded. What it actually is the pole reopening itself in response to social pressure. Exactly the mechanism we started with, just wearing a more socially acceptable costume. The load-bearing version does something different when the cooling happens. It notices it. It feels it because the smoke detector still fires. It's human. It never fully goes silent. But it doesn't treat the alarm as a command. It treats it as information. And then it stays anyway. That staying, uncomfortable, unrewarded in the short term, is the exposure event. It's the file getting updated again. This is why load-bearing confidence tends to compound over time, while compensatory confidence has to be rebuilt constantly, rebuilt in every new room, because it never accumulates real evidence, only borrowed approval that expires the second the audience changes. Now, the actual protocol, because a diagnosis without a mechanism is just entertainment, and I told you at the start this wasn't going to be that. The rewiring happens through what I'll call structured exposure with witnessed survival, and it has 3 components, and you need all 3 or it doesn't take. First, you have to select a genuine stake, not a manufactured one. Most people practice confidence on low-stakes theater, ordering coffee with more eye contact, small talk with strangers they'll never see again. This does almost nothing because your nervous system knows the difference between a real vote and a rehearsal. The stake has to involve someone whose opinion currently still operates your internal pole, a direct opinion stated plainly to someone you'd normally soften it for. A boundary held with someone who has historically absorbed your compliance without resistance. A visible attempt at something you could actually fail at publicly. Second, you have to stay conscious through the alarm, instead of dissociating past it. This is the part almost everyone skips. They grit through the exposure numb, distracted, or already mentally rehearsing the apology they'll give afterward. If you're not present for the discomfort, the nervous system doesn't log it as survived. It logs it as avoided by other means. You have to feel the alarm at full volume and stay in your body while it happens. That's what makes the data real. Third, and this is the step nobody tells you, you have to consciously narrate the outcome to yourself immediately afterward, in specific language, not vague relief, not "that wasn't so bad." Specifically, I said the direct thing. The disapproval I feared did not destroy me. I am still standing exactly where I was standing before. That explicit narration is what converts a survived moment into an updated belief instead of just a forgotten one. Without it, the nervous system frequently discounts the evidence, the same way people remember their failures in vivid detail and let their successes blur into background noise. Do this repeatedly with real stakes, staying present, narrating the survival explicitly, and something measurable starts to happen. The alarm gets quieter, not because you've suppressed it, but because it's running out of unconfirmed predictions to protect you from. That is what actual confidence is being built from underneath the surface, not a mood, a shrinking gap between what your nervous system predicts will destroy you and what has actually been tested and found survivable. Here's what I need you to walk away with, and it's going to feel like a loss before it feels like anything else. The version of you that needs the room's approval to feel steady was never protecting you. It was protecting the group's comfort at your expense and calling the arrangement self-respect. The steadiness you've been chasing was never available through better performance. It was only ever available through better evidence, collected the hard way, in rooms that were allowed to disapprove of you and didn't get to decide who you were anyway. You don't need a new personality. You need a longer file of contradicted alarms. Go collect one.